And then the last thing I'll say on this is just start to find your voice, right? Every salesperson sounds different. You and I can say the exact same thing and you get the sale and I wouldn't. There's a lot of language, right? And just comfortability in presenting yourself as authentic. So don't panic when you can't find a way to communicate clearly. Just try things. Try to find your voice. And eventually, when you do, you're off to the races.
When you get on that first call with a new client, do you know what questions you must have answers to by the end of that call? In this episode, we're talking with Brock Hendricks, and he'll share how the best practices of premium sales and service can help your legal team focus on the right clients. Now, Brock's background is about as far from the legal industry as it gets. He's the top premium salesperson for the Staples Center, home to the NBA's Los Angeles Lakers and Clippers, the WNBA's LA Sparks, and the NHL's Los Angeles Kings. In short, he's selling premium suites to high-dollar clients, and that's his only job. Brock will explain what he calls the premium way, his method of structuring repeatable fundamentals of sales teamwork and rapport building for your practice. We have a fun, wide-ranging talk about premium sales and all the parallels between Brock's high-dollar clientele and how attorneys should approach their sales process. I'm John Strohmeyer, and this is the 5-Star Counsel Podcast. The market for legal services is shifting, and lawyers who don't adapt will be left behind. This podcast gives you a competitive edge in today's market by sharing the client service lessons you probably didn't learn in law school or in law practice. Let's start the show. Hey 5-Star listeners, before we start, I want to tell you about our amazing sponsor, Smith AI. Smith AI is a virtual receptionist service for small businesses with a specialty in working with solo and small law firms. I signed up with them within weeks of starting my firm because they are affordable for even the smallest solo practice. Their friendly receptionists respond to potential clients in Spanish or English, screen and schedule new leads, and can even take payments. And now they're answering calls 24 hours a day. So even when you're asleep, they're still working. Even beyond the phone, they've got live agents and chat bots ready to capture leads on your website, by text, and by Facebook Messenger. Smith's friendly gatekeepers can staff your front line so you can work uninterrupted. You can finally have the peace of mind that while you're working, you're not missing out on future work. Plans start at just $70 a month for calls and $100 a month for chats. Smith AI is offering a free trial, and our podcast listeners get an extra $100 discount code with promo code 5STAR. That's FIVESTAR. Sign up and learn more at www.smith.ai. Don't let another day go by. Try Smith AI. Hey, Brock, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, John, extremely good to see you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So, Brock, you are one of our continuing line of guests who have nothing to do with the legal industry. And part of the reason I keep doing that is it's so important for us to get perspectives outside of just our little legal closed hive mindset. And you've got this interesting job where you sell suites for the Staples Center in Los Angeles. And there you are. You are selling a premium product. I thought we could probably pick up a thing or two from you about marketing, how we target the right clients on sales, how we're delivering our knowingly expensive products to clients. And then finally, some of the differences, what I've been calling red herring products, making sure the things that you're probably doing when you sell the pampering, fun, and entertainment of a suite at the Staples Center that lawyers, when they're selling results, just don't make sense. So there's a lot to dig into, and I'm going to kind of toss it over to you to explain kind of what you've called the premium way as your way of selling these premium products.
Yeah, I appreciate the way that you set that up, because I do feel like the way that we conduct our business is similar to the way you just described it. It's a cost ineffective item. It's an expense. It's a premium product. But basically what my job is I work for the Staples Center in Los Angeles. So I represent the LA Lakers, the LA Clippers, the LA Kings, and the LA Sparks, plus a handful, maybe 100 something concerts a year at the Staples Center. We'll go put this to work for businesses. And I'd like to think I have some kind of impact on the legal world, because a lot of the clients that use us are legal companies. So it's mostly a referral tool or some kind of partner bonus, recruitment for top attorneys, something like that. But yeah, we're a premium product that takes quite a big sale. It's a mammoth. It's not something that I think every business can afford. So you have to be very practical and fundamental in the way that you pitch this. So in reference to the premium way, that refers to it, there's this article that John got a hold of that I kind of went around the sports industry. I wrote this article called The Premium Way. It got tossed around the sports industry a bit. The whole point of the article is really just saying, hey, I have a really difficult sale, but it doesn't have to be that difficult if you're process based. And this is kind of the process I use. And most of it really just said it's about us. It's not about you. It's about the team. It's about the firm, and not about one individual partner or attorney's accomplishments. And mostly just it's about fundamentals and process, right? And I think that applies to anything in life, right? Whether that's a case, whether that's trial, whether that's trying to get something settled before you go to litigation, whether that's selling suites at the Staples Center. It's all about how can you be so fundamental in your process of knowing exactly where you're going at every minute. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but I mean, I base all of that based on how is my words, how are the things I'm about to say going to affect how that person on the other side of it feels by those actions.
Interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, lots of things to dig in there, but I'm going to ask, just to give everybody some context, what are some of the common like packages? Is it when somebody comes in and is buying a suite, you're just doing suite sales. So is it a one game, one show, 1 week season package? Kind of what are some like the context and some of the numbers around these sales?
Yeah, and it will vary depending on market. So if you're a Charlotte attorney, the numbers for the Charlotte Hornets look a lot different than the numbers for our team. So how our business works is at the Staples Center, the 4 teams that have a contractual agreement to play in our building, they all opt into the same agreement. So basically, you're selling all 4 teams plus concerts at once. So when you have a suite at Staples Center, there's some suites that include every Lakers, Clippers, Kings game, every concert, every special event. Literally, the Democratic or Republican National Convention shows up into town and you have a suite and it happens at Staples Center, you just get your suite for that. So that's kind of our business model. What we're talking about is a 6-figure product. I mean, we do have suites in our building that are $1 million per year on a multi-year contractual agreement that has a yearly escalator. So you're agreeing to, for example, a 6-year deal that every year goes up 6% in cost, and that's contractually agreed upon before you ever sign. So that's what you're really looking at. And what attorneys mostly do with that is referrals. You're just trying to get FaceTime with somebody that could give you business, or you're just trying to get your name in front of somebody who could give you business. So the next time that employment attorney's wife trips and falls, they'll think, who is that personal injury attorney that gave me tickets to the Clippers game? And that's kind of the concept.
Right. I mean, obviously, there are probably only so many lawyers buying into the suites there, but just wrapping our head around a business is assuming it's only businesses because, individuals probably aren't throwing down for a suite like that. But just having the money and signing on the line for that means you, as you mentioned, have your fundamentals ready to go. So let's start thinking about, well, what are those fundamentals that when you're selling a 6 or 7 figure product, what are you doing to get ready for those sales?
Yeah, the very quickest way I could describe fundamentals is I have the same process, whether I'm talking to an attorney, whether I'm talking to a fashion manufacturer, whether I'm talking to a consumer brand. I can go in and have the same conversation, right? And it doesn't have to be as complicated as, okay, what do I say differently to a fashion manufacturer than I say to an attorney? And here's what I mean by that. I mean, I can walk into any room in America and have one filler question, one bit of rapport, and then we're going to go straight into, hey, I don't want to waste your time. Here's exactly why I'm here. So I'll have a line to start, right? After you build some rapport, something super common I ask is, are you from Los Angeles? Because almost nobody's from Los Angeles. So that will almost inevitably spark some kind of conversation. No, I'm from Houston. And oh, are you a Rockets fan? Oh, I'm from Minnesota. Oh, that's great. My mom is from Minnesota. Something like that.
Oh, I'm very sorry for your team.
I'm sorry,
for your loss.
Yeah.
Rockets. Sorry.
Rest in peace, Rockets. It was a great Western Conference Finals or semifinals for us at the Lakers playing you guys. But the next thing, so after you built some rapport, you built some trust, you hopefully broken down a wall or two, right? You make it pretty simple of the value proposition of why you're there. Hey, just so you know what I do, I appreciate the time to connect. Just so you know what I do, I manage all the premium assets at the Staples Center. Businesses will use us for a certain amount of ways, and I'm here to see if it would be a fit. And if not, it's just great for you probably to know somebody at the Staples Center at the Lakers, and for me to know somebody in your field. So that's kind of the value proposition, right? Is that there's no losing here. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation. And I might be an asset to you. You might be an asset to me. We both might have something to gain here. Maybe we won't. But the worst that's going to happen is a 15-minute sit down conversation. And here's what I say: 15 minutes. I think young salespeople or people that are nervous to sell take more time than people with a process, right? Part of the reason I have a process is because I want to be efficient with that person's time. I want to get in, get out, and after 15 minutes, know everything I need to know about their business. And how I'll do that is I'll come in with 4 or 5 questions specific either to their business or to their category, right? Here's really the 4 reasons why anybody ever uses something at Staples Center. Number one in Los Angeles, especially, is employee retention. Before COVID, it was never harder to keep an employee in the city of Los Angeles than it was there. We lost one of our junior level employees, right? And it cost us about 90 grand in opportunity cost in training to replace that employee. And that's a low contributor for us, right? So I think about an attorney and how much one attorney brings into a firm. And I think, wow, how much more does that, how much more is that employee worth than our junior level salesperson, right? So you start to think about what could I do that costs a lot less than $90,000 a year that keeps that employee in the building, even just an additional year, even just pushing off so I don't have to pay that 1 year later. So that's the main reason why people use us is for employee retention and appreciation efforts. The other is client development, right? I have a handful of clients and I need to make sure that they know that they are important to my business. A similar example would be like an advertising firm. If they have 10 clients, right? And one of those 10 clients leaves, that's 1/10, if not more, of their entire business just leaving. So what kind of things can you do to keep them appreciated and retained? The other is salespeople. So this may not apply directly to the legal world, but if you have a sales team of 10 people, how do you just keep those guys motivated? How do you give them something either to help them close a deal, like tickets to the Staples Center, or how do you just load them up constantly, right? Because the highest ROI employees you have are your sales team. So anything you can do to kind of keep the motor going is helpful. The fourth reason, and this is the one that you can't prospect for, this is only the bailout at the very end, is some people just like nice shit. It's that simple. So, sometimes it makes no sense for your business, but somebody leaves and goes, you know what? I don't really need this, but I like the Lakers or I like the Clippers. So let's do this. So I am asking questions based on those 4 things, really those 3 things: the employees, the sales team, how are you getting new business, the clients, how are you keeping business, or who are your clients? And every single question is super intentional with the understanding of when I ask that question, I am looking for very specific things to translate back into, oh, well, because you told me X, Y, and Z, I have X, Y, and Z, how it relates straight to my product.
Right. And so, like I was mentioning, going to the Staples Center, anything you're going to do there is almost certainly going to be under the category, fall under entertainment, pampering, or fun, which is not why you come to a lawyer. You're coming to us to turn some results. And so when I hear all of that, it's knowing why people buy you. And it's some version of that. The people you're selling to are ultimately, the procurement agents for whoever it is, whether it's clients, employees, or prospecting. They're saying, look, we know this is something we want to deliver to them. So for us as lawyers, I think the thing to take from this is we need to know why people are going to be coming to us and why they're going to be paying for us. So that means we've got to be very clear. People don't just hire us for efforts. Like, nobody cares that we poured 5 hours of legal time on this project. Did you give me an answer that I can use? Did you get the motion approved in court? Did you get me divorced or the kid adopted? Whatever it is, knowing kind of what that first, what the feature is, but really so you can come in later and sell the benefits and, ultimately probably an emotion based around that in some super deep level selling.
I agree. And I think it could be as simple as, how did I feel about what that attorney did for me? So sometimes it's not, to your point, an endemic solution to use sports to drive your business. Because what the hell do the Lakers have to do with you helping a client settle a case in pre-litigation? So I understand that. But sometimes it's as simple as, let's say you go through a case and you don't get results. Did they appreciate the effort? Did they feel like you really cared? Did they feel like you really took care of them and things didn't go their way? I think attorneys so often think in black and white and numerical and quantitative results. Sometimes you have to put your lawyer hat off and think about how the client is thinking in qualitative ways. So to you, it may just be as simple as they expect me to get results. Yes or no, did I do it? Did I deliver value? And sometimes it's not always that. Sometimes it's not as black and white. And it's as like, hey, did I feel taken care of regardless of the result? Right. And that applies to me too in premium, right? If I sell an attorney a suite, certain attorneys, right? All they need is one new client developed from their endeavors of having a suite at Staples Center, and it can pay for the lifetime of the suite, right? So, how do they feel about me the other 300 games where they are not getting a client from me, right? Do they feel lied to? Do they feel like they were led astray? Or do they believe what I have told them and do they feel like they have been taken care of, right? Because, and this is, I think, something attorneys miss is that everything in life is about how do I feel about the way I spent my money, right? So, how do you feel about spending a couple $100,000 on a suite? It could probably be pretty frightening. I would be pretty fucking terrified to have a $300,000 bill on my business, right? But it's all about how did this person feel when I sent them to a game and then all of a sudden I get business back, right?
Right. And it's taking it and thinking through on the other side, how are you going to make it easy for that person to say yes? How are you going to know what they're paying is going to deliver on something for them? Do you have an option for them that makes sense for what they're trying to buy?
Yeah, and here's a qualitative, quantitative example, right? So I think an attorney looks at that and goes, "Wow, let's say a suite's $100,000, and that breaks down to $250 per ticket per event." I think an attorney goes, "Wow, do I really have to spend $250 on one person who may or may not give me business?" But here's another qualitative response too. That qualitative response is, "Well, yeah, but you don't have to bat 1,000. You could bat 100." And the numbers probably lean back into your favor, right? And at the very least of the people you're giving tickets to a game to, and it doesn't work out in your favor, they don't ever need your services. If they feel warm and fuzzy about the way you took care of them at a sporting event, what happens when their neighbor trips and falls? And you're a personal injury attorney. Well, here you go. Have you met John? Or that becomes the situation. So sometimes it's a lot less about, hey, how do I not spend this number that is a hard number that is inflexible when qualitative values of how people feel are very flexible.
That is so interesting. I'm going to riff on the the black and white thinking because lawyers love just applying our legal thinking of if we can find one exception, then the whole premise is blown instead of the one exception is always one exception and it doesn't mean it still doesn't work. It just means things aren't always black and white. But I want to take you back to the process. So you said you're starting off with kind of the filler question of hi, how you're doing, how's the weather, whatever that is. You're building the rapport, which is what so few of us think about, of taking the few minutes to sit down and learn about the person, because it does make it easier. And I remember a few years ago, I was buying a car and my family member loved buying cars. And so I just outsourced everything to her. Like, here's the car. I don't care where you buy it from. And she had done all the research and all the negotiations. We went to sign paperwork and, I showed up and the sales guy was just confused. And I mean, at one point we were, I wasn't being mean to him, but he's, talking. He was like, yeah, I'm just trying to build rapport with you. I was like, dude, the sale's over. Like, you and I both know that I'm never coming back to this dealership. The rapport portion of this sale is gone. And it doesn't mean that I'm not being nice to you, but I'd rather just sign my paperwork and drive away.
I think that's a super natural tendency to have, right, in life. Is that like so much of life is transactional, right?
Right.
You could look at this podcast, right, and go, okay, as soon as Brock records this and I get my quality content, fuck him. I can't get anything else from him, right? And I
Right.
do think that's an extreme way to describe it, but that is often how attorneys think about people, right? But so many attorneys that do the feelings part of this conversation well will tell you that you just never know. It's so much of networking, right? It's so much of you never know where that's going to come from, right? I'll go back to the money part in the black and white thing and just think about it this way. I spent 20 grand on a Volkswagen a couple months ago, right? And it's the biggest purchase I've made in a long time. And I loved the person taking care of me. The process was super easy. I was never uncomfortable and it always felt listened to. So I turned around and wrote a check for $20,000 and never thought about it again.
Right.
A couple days later, I went to a local restaurant and asked for a burger with lettuce and cheese only. And they said, lettuce and cheese only? Yeah, totally, got it. And then gave me a burger with every single thing on it and then gave me the wrong kind of fries. Probably $10, right?
Right.
But how do I feel about both of those transactions? I felt amazing leaving a $20,000 transaction. I felt terrible leaving a $10 transaction. And I still think about that exact location. It's called Apollo Burger. I'm still thinking about it because of how I felt losing that money, right? How did the person that I gave my money to make me feel? So even if it's a world where, right, our transaction's over, I may never try a case for you ever again, maybe by showing a little tiny humility or humanity, who knows where it goes down the road. Maybe you get another one, maybe you don't. And the least you could do is just kind of be a light, fun human being, right? So that at the very least, when someone goes, hey, what about this attorney? You feel,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, I feel okay about them.
Right. Now that I've realized that I was a complete monster to this guy years ago. I mean, but really what I was thinking about is something I got from the Sandler selling method from one of their books years ago is like rapport is one of the first things you do. And like you have to have that before you can go any further in the sales process because it sets it up so that the rest of the process is easier. You can't be building it once you've agreed on terms and identified pain and all the rest of it because you're not helping move the transaction forward at that point. Like this is when you go in and build that rapport, you are building that relationship early. And how we do that is, I mean, up until the last few years, the only way you could do that was just interpersonal. But now we've got these other things like Instagram and YouTube and LinkedIn where people can kind of see you and feel you out much earlier. And one of the things that I keep harping on for myself, like I've got my 3 dogs as employees on my firm website. And once a month or so, I'll get a client who says, we weren't sure if it was you or somebody else, but we hired you because you had your dogs. And the survivorship bias that comes in and says, oh, like everybody who hires me wants that. It's, what it probably is for as many people who say that, there are probably an equal number of people who see that and say, this guy isn't serious. We don't want to work with him. We're going somewhere else. And that's great because if that's too much for them, we weren't going to hit it off anyway. And it probably was just going to be a tense relationship no matter what.
Yeah, and also, I'm not saying rapport gets you the sale. I'm also not saying go read their autobiography and remember it 24/7. Like, I just think a little bit of effort into knowing that somebody cares goes a long way. Here's the key, right? This is all I'm trying to do in rapport building. I'm looking for one thing, whatever that thing is, that I either have in common with you or I know about you that is interesting. And that's going to be my permanent rapport builder. And that's the foundation of our relationship every time we call, right? And it can be something super deeply personal, right? Like we have the same favorite restaurant, or we take our coffee the same way, or our moms have the exact same name. Something so simple, either super personal like a mother's name, or impersonal like we take coffee the same way, or something interesting about them, right? So, John, now all I know about you is that you're from Houston. Every time we talk, we're going to talk about Houston. Something Houston related. Did something happen in the city? What happened to the Rockets this week? Well, it's something I can immediately go back to. That's our thing that I'm going to bring up, and we're going to build some rapport there. Or if our mothers had the same name, we somehow stumble upon that information. That's going to be the funny piece of information that I bring up immediately that just gets the guard down and opens up some kind of a door for you two to have a relationship where at the very, very least, even if we're not in a transactional relationship, you just don't hate me.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that you can open every conversation just assuming that some Houston sports team has made a boneheaded decision in the last 48 hours that is, if not career ending for somebody, it's at least going to ruin a season. Of course, the Astros did, they pulled out a few things this week and made some good trades. So it's just a matter of time until that swings back.
To save our relationship, I'm not going to talk about the cheating Astros. We'll the Houston Astros. We'll leave it at that.
Look, enjoy your half a championship.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Look, I mean, come on. So, Brock, as we start looking towards the end of this interview, what are some pitfalls that people who are starting to think more about their sales process in a structured way, what are some of those pitfalls that people can fall into?
I think that the number one thing people fall into is ironic that I've talked so much about relationship building and rapport building. I think a big one that people fall into is that they try to build too much rapport. They try to spend 15 minutes on making you like me, right? There is a certain portion of attorneys that's right, that this is a transactional relationship. How do we get from point A to point B as quickly and efficiently as possible? And I mean, especially in our world, we're talking to businesses. We're not often talking to individual consumers. I'm talking to a CEO who has a million things to do, right? And I am just one of those million things. So there is a point where, yeah, you have to build some rapport and make them like you, but you've also got a job to do. And that job is to get them interested in what you are selling, right? So that's a big one that I think people fall into. I also think people fall into the mistake that facts and features complement your sale. They don't make your sale, right? So I've talked about what a suite does for attorneys. It helps them get clients, right? But I didn't go, it's 12 seats in a suite and it costs this much and there's a security deposit and you get an early entrance and all these boring things that don't really matter to the ROI. Going back to this qualitative, quantitative thing, right? I think people matter. What matters most is what you will do for them and then the little features add in. But I think people that start selling things early on get way too lost in the little things like, hey, it comes with a parking pass. That's not a selling point. That's a feature. So start to learn the difference. And then the last thing I'll say on this is just start to find your voice, right? Every salesperson sounds different. You and I can say the exact same thing and you get the sale and I wouldn't. There's a lot of language, right? And just comfortability in presenting yourself as authentic. So don't panic when you can't find a way to communicate clearly. Just try things. Try to find your voice. And eventually when you do, you're off to the races.
Exactly. The voice question or the indication like, oh, find your voice on it. It really, what finally snapped to for me was it wasn't that I had these words. It was I was comfortable with the words that were coming out of my mouth and I didn't have to think about them anymore. I could just know, look, I've said this 400 times. I know how to explain this to the person in my own voice. I'm not just parroting somebody else. And you'll probably have to parrot somebody for a while before you get there. So, I mean, I love that. So also sales training is a huge market. There are so many places we can go online. We're going to link to your Premium Way article, but what are some other resources that are out there for folks? What's helped you get to where you are in sales?
I mean, as far as specific resources, there are individual sales trainers left and right. I mean, you can pretty much throw a rock right in the sports industry and find a sports industry themed sales trainer. So there's a couple that are really good, including Sean Graham is a name of someone who's really helped us, right? He's a sales trainer from the UK who came over to work in sports and had real life experience and really taught us kind of how you translate real world topics in real sales into sports sales. There's also this book I loved called The Power of Playing Offense by Paul Epstein. That's the one book I'd have to recommend that if you're trying to get into sales, that's the one to do. And the best thing I think that helped me when I was getting into sales was just learning. I wanted to hear how as many different people pitched the same thing, right? To learn how I used it. So sometimes in sales, you can study every playbook, you can read every book in the world, but it's one of those things you got to go out and do, and you got to go out and fail. And then you bring back what really works, right? So go listen to 4 people talk about the exact same thing and go, okay, I'm going to take a little piece of that and a little piece of that of all 4 people and figure out how you say it. And that will pay dividends because that's the foundation of how you are an authentic human. And the best salespeople in the world aren't salespeople at all.
That's a great place to end things. Brock, thanks so much for being with us. Where can people find you?
Please find me on LinkedIn if you have any questions about specifically like how attorneys can use sporting events or anything like this, any sort of sales training. Please find me on LinkedIn. My name is Brock Hendricks. I have a podcast about careers in sports. So if you want to hear about how people have made their careers, made a life of sports, you can listen to Hot Coffee, Cold Beer. And then, yeah, keep listening to this show. And hopefully I'm a reoccurring guest. I want to be like your Billy Crystal. Like, like when Johnny Carson didn't have a guest, so he just brought Billy Crystal on. That's what I want to do here.
That is awesome. We'll have to look into that. We'll talk to Bobby about this. Brock, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much for listening. You can find more info on us and get your free white paper on client service at 5starcouncil.com. You can get in touch with me at john@5starcouncil.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe wherever fine podcasts are found and leave us a review wherever you can.